Hi Sri, good morning. Good evening Sri. So I can see Bhaskar, Murthy, Naveen, Praveen, Bhushan, Raju, Sri and Shayad. So hope everyone in the call. Let me share you my screen. Okay. Let me know once you see my screen. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Yeah, fine. So so we are working on triggers. So this is session number 3. So for the triggers. And in trigger yesterday, so we worked on uh, a map variable, so where we can map the values, key and value combinations, and updating the same results in the before insert event. So this trigger executes for only before insert. So before committing the data in a database, this logic will be executed and updates the results. So what we did is, so we have created one variable. So our requirement is in the student object, when I'm creating a new record. So before committing the data in a database, so to whom the user, so which means based on the owner, we are updating the manager value. So manager column. So this is a one regular use case. So we work for updating the value in some other from some other object. So here user doesn't having um, any relationship with our student object. So but there should be a unique field in between users and our student, that is a owner ID. So based on the owner ID, we are looking for the manager column, and if a user having the manager, so the manager column will be updated in the student level. This is the one requirement. And as a part of the requirement, we have validated the data like date of birth and fee structure. So that is a before insert. So before triggers are simply used for validating the data before committing the data in a database. Let's say I have given a scenario. The same logic should works for the update. So when it is works for the update, so but I don't want to validate my date and salary when the record is updated. So at the time of creation only, I would like to execute that logic. But when at the time of updation, I don't want to execute the manager field update. So in that case, what we can do is we use the context variable, and using the context variable, we can validate the remaining part. So for example, when you go to the triggers, so here is a trigger we wrote. It's a trigger and student object, and here is a logic we have. And I would like to update the same. So which means, let's say for example, go to any existing record, go to the and edit it, When I click on save button, I would like to update the manager based on the user. So when you go to user, so users manager is, so here is a users manager. So but it seems the manager is a different here. The student object seems in a manager is a different. So because we are not executing our trigger in the update event, so we are executing the trigger only insert event. So that is where we are using our events. So here is a before insert event, and it executes only for insert, and here is a context variable. We are filtering our logic to specific events. So when it is an edit event, so when it is an update event, if you wanted to execute the same logic, except the date of birth and fee validations, so then we need to add one more event. Let's say here is an existing trigger. Let me copy this. So if you wanted to execute the logic for before update also, just use before update event, before update. So similar to this, we can use another context variable. So it is update event is update, and write the same logic. So here is the data we are querying, and in the update, in before update, just execute each record and update the results. So I don't want to execute this logic, so I don't need this logic. So this is a before update. So in the before update, so what we are doing is we are executing the same logic. So we are creating a map variable and querying the data from the user object to identify manager name, and creating a map variable for our current user and manager names, and whenever the current users contains a manager ID, then we are updating the value. So before updating the value like this, we use a filter condition. If this value not equal to null, then only update the results. So it's a filter condition. It's the best practice. Use a filter conditions wherever you are updating the results. If it is not equal to null, then only update the results. It's a before update event. At the update event, update the users, manager, and student. So here is a code, just copy and paste, save it. So now execute the logic. So I'm updating the record, edit, and just save it. Now I can see the changes. Which means our trigger is executing for update as well. So like this, if you wanted to execute your logic based on the event, then we use the condition, we use the context variables, and context variables splits the logic. So let's say if you have 1,000 lines of code in your trigger, all the 1,000 lines of code is not required to execute for all the events. So based on the event, we look for a specific logic. So because when you are writing the trigger, so based on, so for the validations, so validations we perform only in the before insert or in the before update event. So it is not required to validate our data after insert or after update. So because in after insert or after update, once a record is created, the record becomes a read only. So the once the data is completed in a database, we don't validate the data. So the logic will be the different for each event. So based on the logic, we need to choose which one is a event that we have to use. If it is just a validation rules, simply validating the data, we prefer before events. And if it is some data related to some other objects, then we use after events. So this is a one use case we can work for in a daily scenario. So this is a valuable scenario. So trigger code will be related to this. So updating some field information from some other object and based on the key parameter, key and value combinations. And if you observe this trigger, here in the before insert and here in the before update, I am unnecessarily executing the same logic. So which means when I'm creating a record, this logic will be executed, and when I'm updating a record, this logic will be executed. So here there is no reusability. So we are writing the same code a number of times. So I wrote the same code 2 times. So in such cases, for the best practices, we use the classes for this, classes and class parameters, classes and class methods and its parameters. And whenever if you wanted to execute the common logic multi times, we declare the same in one method and we perform the operations. So we can call the same method from the trigger, so that it is not required to write the same code 2 or 3 times. That is the Salesforce best practices. Even when you are writing more lines of code in your trigger, and split the code into different methods, so that the code can be reusable later in the enhancements. So that is the Salesforce best practices. So what you can do is, so declare one Apex class. So I'm declaring a class. So you know how to declare a class: public class and the class name. So class name can be, so I'm writing a trigger on student object. So use student trigger helper class. It is a helper class. And split the events public void, and one is manager update. So this is a one method, and for this method I need a list of data which is passing from the trigger. So just declare a list variable list student is my object, and a list of data lsts. So here, so we have the list of data in lsts, and the rest of the logic will be the same. So here is a map variable, just to remove it from here and declare here, and the same logic. What is the current user? Even current user ID we can get in the class level. So because it is an Apex code also. So here is a manager column, just replace the entire code in your method. So instead of trigger.new, so we are passing the LSTS. So we should use LSTS here. So because trigger.new and trigger.old only available in the trigger context, so they are not available in the class context. Both the trigger context and class context will be the different. And in the trigger we use the trigger.new, but whereas in the class we have to use the list variable. because trigger.new is a list of data. At the same time, whereas in the map variable, so we have to use we can use a trigger.new map in the trigger. The same thing can be used as a map variable in the class. That's why the context will be different, and we need to make sure so which is similar to the trigger logic. So here is a empty code. So here is an empty code, is updated is before. So just make sure the method will be a static so that you can easily call using the class name. So student helper class dot the method name manager update, and here is the list of data. So we will pass the trigger dot new here. So trigger dot new is a list of data, and the context is available in the trigger. The values are passing from trigger to class so that the class receives the same data and applies the same logic. So this is one best practice. So here, so no need to even in the before insert method, you don't need to write the same logic. Instead of the logic, you can use the same method. So here is the class and method, and instead of the whole logic, so I don't need the entire logic. So this one I don't need, just call the method. So here is the logic we are updating. So because I'm calling this method so that it updates the manager column. So for this you can create one more method to validate the results. So instead of writing the logic here, move the entire logic to method so that the method can be reusable in the future. So let me declare one more method in the class. So it is DOB and date of birth and fee validation. DOB and fee validation, and again we need a list of data. That's where I am passing the LSTS, so which is a list of data. Just copy the entire logic. We don't need to use in the trigger context, and moving to the class context. So instead of trigger.new, use our list variable, that is LSTS, and rest of the logic will be will remain the same. So even you can use the add error method in the trigger class also. So this is a class code. Create a class. Save it. And go to the trigger, update the trigger with new changes. So here is our trigger code. Let me copy the code. So the scenario that we worked on is, so this is nothing but calling a class from the trigger and passing the parameters. So we are calling a class methods from the trigger, and we are passing the required parameters to the class methods so that the methods will be executed and updates the results. It's a trigger code. So generally this is a best practice we follow. So because if you write the trigger like this, so it is we are splitting the logics. We are executing the logic based on the event. So here is our method UOB and fee validation. So we need to call this method from here. So that we are splitting the entire logic into chunks of code. So that is object oriented best practices. So in object oriented programming language, so everything must be written in the methods, so that whenever you need to call the method, you can reuse it, no need to declare again and again. So this is a code optimization. So this is Salesforce best practices. Even Salesforce is suggesting us, so when you are writing more lines of code, move the entire logic to the methods and call the methods from the trigger, so that anytime if you want to change a certain area, you can just change in the method level, no need to change the entire trigger code. So just go to the method and just update whatever the enhancements will be, and you can verify it. So this is our Salesforce best practice. So this is our trigger, and whenever you are writing a trigger methods, write at least one comment line like this, so that when a new developer modifying your code, they can easily know what is the method functionality, what the method is doing. So manager update. So at least one comment and story number. So story is some story number, and description is this method is used to update the users manager name and students manager field. So like this, it helps to the new developers, or it helps to the new guys who can easily review the code, and they can do additional changes. So in case if they get the enhancements, so like this we should write the comments for each method. So I'm just showing you for one method, so it's required for each method. So that is easy for tracking. So now execute the logic. When I click on save button, it executes the validation. So there is no change in the validation, because as per our trigger, the date must be less than 1990. So I enter the data, then click on save. Now I can see the manager field update, because field is a empty column. So as per our condition, field should not be greater than 10,000. So if I enter more than 15,000, because this is a record update. So now I have already created a record. When I'm updating this, at record update, I did not include this logic. So that's where it allows you to create the record. But whereas in record creation, when you create a record, let's say, or else you can clone the same one. Cloning is nothing but creating a record from the existing. So clone, it copies all the values. This is a record creation. When I click on save button, you can see an error message, because at the time at the record creation, the fee must be less than 10,000. So the validations are working as expected and updating the manager column accordingly. So this is the way we can convert the entire trigger code to a class code. So these are the two events, before insert and before update. So let's say Consider some other use cases. So mostly another event is after insert. So after insert, so once a record is created, so what are the operations we can do? Let's say once a record is created, I would like to send an email. I would like to send an email to some user with some description, user description. So the same thing can be done using the workflow, but let's see. So or else, so using the workflow we can send an email. So no, it's not required, it's an admin configuration, we can do it. So after insert, once a record is created, I would like to, let's say here we have a student object and I would like to create a relationship to the student. So let's say I would like to create a new object called college. So it can be any object. Here we have a relationship between employee and department. At the same time, I'm going to create one more object, that is a class object. It's a class name. Class name is the first field. And I'm going to create few custom fields in the same object. Let's say new, the number of students. It can be a number field or a text field. Number of students. Now this is an independent object and my requirement is I would like to make a relationship between these two. So go to the student object and I would like to create a lookup relationship. Lookup. Class is my object. Now the relationship between student and class is a lookup relationship, and when I'm creating a new student, I can see a relational field class. So from where I can link the class names, I can link the class record, and which means that, so what is a class for the student? So for example, so let's say class name can be, for example, first class 7U, second class, so I have created just three test records for testing the application. And my requirement is when I'm creating a student, let's say when I create a new student, I would like to update how many students belongs to the class. So if I create a new student, so which means if it is a first record, the value should be 1. If I create one more record, the value should be 2. So which means I'm going to calculate the number of students, because we can do the same using the roll-up summary. So but here our relationship is a lookup relationship. So we can calculate the mm, we can calculate the count, minimum, maximum, and summarizing aggregations when we have a master detail relationship between the objects. Let's say whereas in the case of employee and department, So both employee and department contains master detail relationship, which means employee is a child and department is a master, and employee contains a master detail relationship from the department object. So where in the department object, so here is a master detail relationship, so that uh, we can create a roll-up summary. So it's a standard configuration. So here we can create a roll-up summary directly. So I can see the maximum salary. So this is a roll-up summary. So out of these three employees, who has a maximum salary, that will be updated. So the another roll-up summary is total employees. So which means number of employees. If you go to the same department record, I can see the total employees 3. So this is a roll-up summary, sum and minimum, maximum and count operations, and this can be only the relationship is a master detail. So in most of the times the objects relationships are lookup relationships. So because we can create only two master detail relationships in a single object, so that is a maximum count. We can create only two master detail. We cannot create more than two master detail relationships. So total relationships that we can create 40. So as per the latest features, latest releases, and out of 40 relationships, so 2 is the maximum master detail, and based on the maximum master detail relationships, rest of the relationships can be a lookup relationship, and these limitations are applicable to single object. So when you have a lookup relationship between the objects, how can you update the number of records that belongs to the parent? So let's say I have class, and class can be related to a class can have multiple students. Let's say if you go to the students, I have total 4 students. I would like to edit the classes. Edit. Here the class can be first class, the class can be second class, so when you have the records like this, so just create a view, for a quick view. I would like to place class name as well, student name and class name. So here, so Raj and test2 records are having the first and second classes, and let me update the results to other records as well. So in student management system, so we need the student information and we need to calculate the results. So this is one of the regular requirement we work for using the trigger. So the trigger name is rollup triggers. Rollup triggers. So when you have a master detail relationship, then we use the standard rollup functionality. And if you don't have a master detail and if you have a lookup relationship, and we have to write our own code to execute the same results. So this is one of the regular requirement that we work for in a daily projects. And now after insert, once the record is created, so after this is an after trigger. So after triggers executes once the data is committed in a database. So let's say once a record is created, I would like to execute one logic. Let's say my logic will be updating the number of student count It is called a rollup count trigger. So once the record is created, once the child record is created, update the same results in the class level. So that is the trigger. So I will show you for one event. I will show you the same trigger for one event, and you try for the rest of the events. So let's say I will show you for after insert event. So what are the events that we can execute the same logic? One is, it is required for after insert event. So because once the student record is created, and if the student record is binded to a class, and we need to update the count in the class level, that's where it is in after insert. The second one is after update. So after update will be used, for example, for an existing record, when you update the class name, so the previous and newly added class will be changed. So the count will be changed for pre-existing trigger.old data and trigger.new data. So for in that case we need after update as well, and we have to execute the same logic for before delete. So before deleting the data, we need to update the results. Then another one is after undelete, and we need to execute the same logic for all the 4 events. So it includes both before events and after events. Let's say we have already written some logic on the student trigger. We have already written a trigger code, so where we have the events called before insert and before update. So we are not using before insert or before update here, so we don't need to change anything in the existing trigger. So we have to write a separate context variables, and we have to write our own logic. So let's say, for example, the requirement is for after insert. The first event is after insert. So once the child record is created, let me close all the tabs. So once a student record is created, so when I'm creating a student record, if the student is binded to the class count will be increased. So what is the class that I am selecting here? So I need to update the results in the class record. So I have class name and number of students. So here I don't have any value in the number of students. When I'm creating a student on a specific class, I should update this value. I should update the value in this column, so based on the number of students. So this is the logic I would like to apply. But here the logic will be with after insert. Once a record is created, then only we need to update. So before insert we cannot do it. So because in before insert we cannot say that the record is going to create or not. Once the record is created, then only we have to execute the logic. Once the record is created, identify the class name, identify the class ID, and update the and query the number of students related to that, and update the results. And let us implement the same logic. So here is the code. So it is the code will be on the student object. I'm writing after insert event. So it is an after insert event, and write the context variable. So here is a context variable. The event would be is insert and is after. So because the logic must be executed at the after insert event, and execute a method. So update number of number student count. Update student count. It is a trigger.new. Because it is an insert event, in insert event we get the trigger.new. As per the session 1, we know trigger.new can be used in the insert event. So because it's a new set of data, new list of data. So here is a method, update student count, and declare a method here. It's a new method I am declaring, public static, and the method name and list of data. And my method name is update student count. And here I am passing the list of student records. So I have to pass the trigger.new, and here is a trigger.new. So that's it. Rest of the logic will be handled in the method itself. So I have the list of records, and I need to identify what is a parent for it. So I need to identify what is the class ID for the created record. So what we can do is, so I have to declare one variable, set variable. So to identify the list of class IDs, there can be many ways we can do that. So this is one of the way. So this is one of the best practice. So identify the set of class IDs and loop through each record. So here is the student record. Loop through each student record. So if student dot class not equal to null, so which is a class ID in a student object. So in student object I have the class ID. So here is a class ID. So I would like to, so once a student is created, I would like to get the list of class IDs, set of class IDs. So if the student contains a class, if the student mapped with a class, and just add the class IDs to the set variable, so that we don't get the duplicates. So because we know a set is a list variable, a set is a collection type, it doesn't allow the duplicates. But whereas in list variable, it is also a collection type, but list allows the duplicate, but set doesn't allow the duplicates. Here when I am creating two students for the same class, I don't need to get the same class ID two times. That's where I am using the set variable, and the set variable collects the unique class IDs. So it contains the class IDs, and if you want to identify what are the class IDs, just use the system.debug statement. So when you write a code, use the system.debug statements always to track the results. So it's the debugging. So here is the class IDs. So once I have the class IDs, I can query the class object lst class equal to, I'm writing a socle query, ID, name, number of students. This is an API from class where ID in, here is ID. So this query retrieves only the class data. So if you want to retrieve the class related students, because we need a student count, we don't need a class data, but we need a student count. So here we use the inner sockles. So we had a discussion about inner and relational socle queries, which is in the previous session. Just to recall it. So inner queries, just recalling you, inner queries are used. So inner queries are used to query the list of childs associated to the parent. So which is on the parent query. So when you have a parent socle, to retrieve the list of childs, we use the inner circle. Whereas in relational query, when you have a circle query on the child object, and to retrieve the parent field information, we use a relational circle. So here we are going to use inner circles. So we have to use the inner circle query. So query to retrieve associated childs of a parent here. So for the class, I would like to query the list of childs, list of students. So comma and add the inner circle. Select ID. I just need ID because I just need a count ID from. So here we have to use the child relationship name. So we have already discussed about this. So if you wanted to identify what is the child relationship name, just go to the student fields, go to the student object and fields. So go to your relationship name. So here is a lookup relationship. Click on class, and here you can see the child relationship name. So just copy the name, and if it is a custom object, use underscore underscore r. If it is a standard object, just use the child relationship name. So here student is a custom object, so we have to use students underscore underscore r, so that this query returns list of child records associated to each class. If you have two classes that you are creating, it retrieves the individual results. So for the class 1 how many students we have, and for the class 2 how many students we have, that separate list we will get using the inner list. So once we have the inner list variable, and repeat a for loop again for class obj class, and my class variable is lsts. This is a list variable, and I am repeating for each class because I need to update the class record. So once the student is created, the count will be updated in the class level. So that's where I'm creating a list variable to update, or else. So here obj class dot, my variable is number of students equal to obj class dot. So here is a list of data, student underscore underscore r dot size. So how many records belongs to this class, we are just identifying the count. So here is the size is a method, so which is predefined in the list variable, which is predefined in the collection type, and it retrieves the number of students and update it to class level. So once you assign it, just use an update statement on your retrieved list. So this is the statement, a simple logic which updates the list of number of students and a class record. So this is a new method I have added. Just copy the method code and update in the class. Here is a trigger. Now go to the class. It's a class underscore underscore c because it's a custom object. So here is a class code. So I have added one new method to my class, and here is a trigger. So this is one of the trigger. So even in my total 6 years of experience, I wrote more than 10 times the same trigger in the regular requirements. That much importance it has. So roll up summary trigger. So just go to the student record. So let's say now I don't have any student count. Let me create a new student. It's a record creation, so it executes all the validations. So you must make sure that data should be correct. So we don't need to update the manager because manager will be updated automatically. I'm adding the first class. So when I click on save button, so the record is created successfully. And when you go to the first class, just go to refresh the class data. So it is not updated. So let's see what happens. For the first class, check how many students you have. I have total 3 students, and create a debug log. Delete all existing logs. Here is after insert. E is insert and E is after. It executes the method. Static method. Yes, we get the list of students and we get the set of class IDs. And for set of class IDs, we get the list of students again. Okay, let's see. Just put the debug log to identify the results. Set the log for the user, current user. Now execute the same. So we can clone this. Clone. When I click on save button, and before that, let me add the debug in few places. System.debug. I would like to add the debug statement to identify how many records I have. It's LSTC data. And here, so what is the count of this? It's just a debug statement to identify the records. Save it. Now reset the logs, clear everything, create a new record, just save it. Go to the debug log and reset the logs. Now you can see your log result. Sorry, we haven't updated the event. So to execute this logic, we have to add this event, right? So we have added the same in the notepad, but not here. Just add the event after insert. So that's where, so here in the log it executed only the before insert, not other events. Now create a new record, clone it. So when I click on save button, even though if you give the manager any other value, so that will be updated with our current manager. So now go refresh the class information. I can see the number of students 5. So which means for the first class, I have total 5 students. So the count will be updated here. So for this we wrote a logic to update the roll-up count. So here is a logic, and it doesn't require more lines of code. Just a smaller statement can be updated at the roll-up count. So this is a roll-up count and the scenarios to work. I'm just separating the code for you. So just an after insert, we just need after insert, and we don't need these two because we are just updating the student count. And whereas in class, we don't need this method, and we don't need this method, we just need this method to update the roll-up count. It's a roll-up count trigger, and similar to that we have other 4 operations. You try these operations, the similar approach. In the same roll-up count, here is an after update event. So this is an exercise for you. So here is an after update. So I will show you after update event, and you try with after delete and after undelete. After undelete is nothing but it is a similar code, similar method we need to execute. So you can add the condition like this here. So for example, let me show you for after undelete. Rollup count at after undelete. So for example, so when I delete this, for the delete event I did not create any logic. So let's say for example, when I delete this, delete, so I have deleted the record, but the count is not changed. The reason is in the delete event we didn't execute any logic. But when I click on clone, means when I create a new record, new student record, when I create a new student record, I still, the count is 5 because that is a count, because for the new event it has executed. But when I undelete the record, the record will be added to the existing a class existing class, because the student belongs to this class. In that case, the count should be increased. So that is undelete event. So simple logic. So the rest of the logic remains the same. So class and trigger. What we have to do is just add here, just add one event after undelete. So after undelete is a kind of insert event. So it is also nothing but an insert. So just creating a new record. So update student count, the same method I am executing and passing the trigger.new, but this logic should execute for after undelete also. So here is a one event, trigger.isInsert, and use our condition or trigger.isUndelete and trigger.isAfter. If it is insert or if it is undelete, it must be after. So for both the conditions must be after. In that case, execute the same class. I did not change anything in the class code. Edit, just adding one more condition after undelete, and here is insert is before and is insert is after. So here at after event, add one more context or use our condition, whether it is insert or undelete, and must be after, which means if it is triggered for both after insert and after undelete, this logic will be executed. Now I have the class count 5, and when I undelete, now the trigger logic will be executed, and you can see the count changes. So here is a 6 is a count, which means for after undelete also my logic is executed. So this is a one event set after undelete event. So the next one is, so after update means, so when I go to the existing student, just to go to the existing student, if I change the student value, means if I change the class value to some other, so let me change the class value of this, edit, and he moved to second class. When I update this, so if you calculate the first classes 1 2 3 4 5, I have 5 students in the first class. Just go to the first class and refresh. Here the count is not updated, because when the record is updated, we need to decrease this count, and the count should be increased to the second class, because a new student will be added to the second class. The count should be increased. So whereas in second class, just sort it. So I have total 2 students. When I go to the second class, I can't see any count because I haven't executed any logic here. So we have to update the same results in the update event as well. So let me show you the smaller part. Set after update. Once a student is updated, just update rollup count for both new record and existing record. So here new record and existing record is nothing but, so let's say for example, when I change the class for the student, we have to decrease the count for the existing class, and we have to increase the count for the newly added class for the same student. So we are not creating a new student, we are just updating the student, but the class will be the different. So initially I have the first class, now the class will be the second here. So for example, I have a student Razu, and on the record level I have first class now. So this is an existing data. So the existing data will be identified by using the trigger.old. And now the class will be changed from the same record to second class. So this is trigger.new, trigger.new and trigger.old. So we need to identify the classes for both the records. For both the trigger.new and trigger.old, we need to identify the classes and we have to update the results. So that is what we have to do. So how can we identify the trigger.old and trigger.new? So because for the new records we can use the trigger.new, and for the existing records we can use the trigger.old. The same variable can be used. Instead of trigger.new we can use the trigger.new map. Here also trigger.old map. So trigger.new is equal to trigger.new map dot values. So values. At the same time, trigger.old is equal to trigger.old map dot values. So it's a list of data. So values is a predefined method. It returns the list of values with this map variable. So let us implement the same logic. So these are the two events. I'm adding one more event after update. It's an after update event. In after update event, I'm writing a context if trigger dot is update and trigger dot is after. It is after update event. Update count at insert. The method is update count at insert, and I'm creating another method. Update count at update event. Class update event. You can choose the proper names. So we need two variables. One is a trigger.new and another one is a trigger.old. The best practice is, so we can pass the map variables. Let us pass the map variables. In this case, student helper class dot update. I'm passing trigger dot new map and trigger dot old map. So I'm passing the map variable to my method. Update student count at update event. I'm passing both the trigger dot new and the trigger dot old. So we need to capture those values here. We know the map declaration will be, in the first session we discussed on this. The entire record will be mapped to, the entire record will be the value and the key will be the record ID. So in trigger dot new map is a map of data. Each record is binded to its associated record ID. So here, so map, the first one is ID and the second one is student record, student underscore C, new map data. At the same time, map ID student underscore C and old map. So we are passing both the new and old map, and we need to compare here. Let's say I have a new map, so new set of data, which means, so we get this data. New map means we get this data, associated data. So I'm repeating a for loop for student objs new map dot, because that is a map dot values. Map dot values returns the new list of data, such as list of data, and comparing the results. See if objs dot class underscore C not equal to, if the class is updated, then only I would like to collect the data. Then only I would like to collect the list of classes. So if the class is not updated, I don't want to execute this logic because the count remains the same. If the class is updated, so which means for any student, I go to the student and here is the student. When I edit the record, if the class is updated, then only I need to update the number of students in both records. If the class is not updated and some other field is updated, then I don't want to execute my logic to update the class count, because class still remains the same. But so when the class is updated, then only execute the logic. That's where I'm adding the condition if new class not equal to old class. Old map dot get of id dot class. So which means, so old map is our map variable. From the old map, get is a one method. Get means it returns the entire record of this record id, and from the record, so I'm just retrieving the class. If new class and old class is not equal to, if both are not equal, then add the list data. Add the set of class IDs. You can declare this as a public variable so that anytime you can use the same. So else you can declare the same here. Set class IDs dot add. So here I'm adding both the new class and old class. Add both the new and old classes. So here is the set of class IDs I have. So once I have the IDs, still the logic remains the same. So what we can do is we will create one more method to optimize our code. Let's say public void, a public static void helper method. So in the helper method, I would like to pass set of class IDs. So set class IDs. I would like to pass set of class IDs. So here is the entire logic I have. Just to copy the logic, remove it from here and place it in a separate method. So just I am optimizing the code, because the same logic we need in two events. So we have to execute the same logic here and we have to execute the same logic here. So instead of writing the two times, I simply call this method helper method. A helper method by passing the set of IDs. I have the set of IDs in both the methods. Just optimize like this. So this method executes only for update and collecting the set of class IDs, and we are passing the class IDs to helper method, and from where it updates the logic. This is one of the best practice we have to use. Copy, go to the class, update the logic, go to trigger. So we have to add the event, and we are calling the method also. One is for insert and undelete, another one is for update. Let's say I go to existing student, and before that go to list of classes and check the count. So I have, in the first class I have 6 students, and I would like to update the student of the first class to second. Here is the first class. I would like to change the class second class and save it. Now the count will be decreased in the first class and the count will be increased in the second class for all the students. Refresh. Now I can see 4 and 3. So let's go to the students, refresh. You can check it. So 4 students I have in the first and 3 students in the second and 1 student in the third. So for example, if I edit, just edit the third class to first, edit, and the third class to first. Now I have 5 first class students and 3 second class students. Go to the classes, refresh, 5 and 3, total 8 records, 5 and 3. So like this we can update the results even in the update event, right? So this is one of the regular user trigger. So most of the times we will so in the real time, so this is one of the regular requirement. So this is a code optimization. So we are using another method to optimize the code. So in object oriented programming language, so we try to split the code into different methods for the reusability. So we are not rewriting the same logic again and again. So we are just using the existing logic to update our results. So even here, so if you want to declare outside, you can do that. If you want to declare here, just declare it, so that it's not required to declare 2 times. So here just edit. I don't want to declare the same variable 2 times, just to remove it in both the places and declare as a global. Because the static method, so declare the static. Okay. So here is a variable. So I have removed in 2 places and placed in one time. So this is a one logic. And so we try for delete event. So once a record is deleted, so I need to decrease the count. You try this logic. You try this event for the same trigger. Now you know trigger.new and trigger.old as well. So trigger.new is a new set of data and trigger.old is a existing data. So you must need practice to understand these concepts. So otherwise it would be difficult. Try to do as soon as you can do the practice. So because so we are covering all the complex scenarios in the training. That's what. And I will give you a few more requirements to work from your end. Let's say in a student object, I'm creating one more field. Let's say city. It can be a text field or it can be a pick list field. Let's say make it pick list so that we don't get the invalid entries. So from the list of values, use a student pick one value to update the city city. Let's say these are the 3: Hyderabad, Bangalore and Chennai. Or if you want to add more values, you can include it. And my requirement, this is also one of the important scenario. So for each student, there is a column called city. So here is a city. So I update the city to some other Hyderabad. At the same time, Bangalore. Here again Hyderabad. So my requirement is, so for the second class, count the list of second classes. So here is the second class. I have 3 students, and I have Hyderabad, Bangalore, and Hyderabad. So my requirement is, I will create a one field in the second class, in the class record class object. Just create a new field in the class object. New. It is a text area type. Let's say locations. So locations is a new field. In the class level. So my requirement is, so here is the second class. For the second class, I have 3 cities: Hyderabad, Bangalore, and again Hyderabad. My requirement is, ignore the duplicates. Just consider unique cities, which means Hyderabad and Bangalore. That needs to be updated in the class level. Like this. I have 2, right? Hyderabad, Bangalore. Just update like this, so that I can understand what are the locations of the students in the class level. I can understand this. So this is again trigger. So trigger logic. So once a student is created, identify the class and query the list of students associated it, and filter the duplicate records. And get the list of cities by separating with comma. Update it in the class level. That is the requirement. So it should be again after insert, after update, before delete. So before delete means, so for example, once I delete, so I have a one record belongs to the Bangalore. If I delete the Bangalore record, still the record needs to be updated to the only available cities. So which means Hyderabad city. So that is a before delete. So undelete, after undelete. So because we have to use the before delete, even the reason is, we should not use after delete. So after delete, we once a record is deleted, we cannot capture the record. So that's where we use the before delete event. In before delete event, we can get the record. So because before deleting the data, we are identifying what is the record that's been updated, and we should not use the record in the SOQL query, so that only we get the remaining records. It's a tricky one. Try it. And so once you have successfully done, so that you are good with the triggers. If you are able to complete it, you are good with the triggers. So you can write any trigger according to our class notes. So it's one of the important area where you have to work more. Any queries? I will share you the class notes just to go through it. The requirement is, write the before delete logic to the about trigger. This is the one. Update the list of student cities on class record separated with commas. So these are the 2 scenarios to work. And here for the second trigger, so the events would be after insert, after update, before delete, after undelete. Mostly after undelete and after insert execute the same context. No need to write any logic, just you need to change the context. But for after update, you have to identify trigger.new and a trigger.old. But before delete, you don't get the trigger.new. So before delete, always the context would be in before delete. data would be always trigger.vol, because we are not creating a new record, we are deleting the existing record. Existing record means a trigger.vol. So we need to manipulate the data only for trigger.vol. But whereas in after insert and after undelete, so always you get the data would be always trigger.new. But it is for after update data, you get both trigger.new and trigger.vol. At update only you get both trigger.new and trigger.vol. But whereas in delete and undelete and insert, you get different context. So it's a hint for you. Any questions? So we are not done with the triggers, and we have the recursive triggers. Tomorrow we talk about the recursive triggers, and maybe it takes another half an hour time to close the triggers. So it's a total 4 sessions. It's a good concept. So let's just try with the given scenarios. In case if you don't if you don't get a chance, and we will work on tomorrow's session. So by tomorrow we can complete the triggers, and we will talk about the rest of the things. Any questions? Then see you tomorrow same time. So morning 7 to 8:30, and we will work on the rest of the things. So have a good day everyone. See you tomorrow. Bye.